Hi everyone. Today I'm going to be reviewing Mount Eerie by The Microphones. This is, well, it was their final album. They released another album just last year, but this was sort of like their final album before they transitioned, before Phil Elverum transitioned into a new project that uh, uh, the namesake of this album, Mount Eerie, which has a lot of great stuff, I'm sure, but I haven't quite heard it yet, and I'm not exactly sure of the artistic differences. But I have heard that A Crow Looked at Me is one of their best albums and one of the best albums of the 2010s. So definitely check that out if you haven't. But today we're talking about this album. It's 5 tracks long. It's a pseudo concept album again. Uh, each track sort of discusses a different aspect of like parts of the universe, like track one, the sun, and then two, the solar system, three, universe, four, Mount Eerie, and five, universe again. It is sort of weird the first time you hear it, when you're wondering why the universe is 2 tracks, the third and the fifth, but it makes sense in terms of like the way the music is conveyed, because the third and the fifth tracks have this monumental hugeness to them. And it wouldn't sound right if they named the third like Milky Way Galaxy or something like that. It just wouldn't fit. Um, that's sort of what separates this album from The Glow Part 2, and I highly suggest you listen to The Glow Part 2 if you haven't, because this album kicks off like right where The Glow Part 2 leaves off, with these foghorns going off, except something's a little bit off, and you can tell because they don't seamlessly transition into each other. It sort of feels like a record is just starting up, and then you get the ambience kicking in, and it's a lot more than on the outro for The Glow Part 2, where it's all a lot quieter, and here everything seems a bit off. There's a lot of like sort of brush, I'd say, in the mix. And the foghorns, there's one going off in your right ear, and then like a higher pitched one goes off in your left ear, and it's really disorienting. It feels like almost like a much darker start. And I will say, this starter, this album opener, The Sun, I think is my favorite album opener of all time. It's around 17 minutes long, and during that time, it just builds and builds and builds into this massive, fiery song. Sort of almost orchestral, but not using orchestral instruments. It's more of just like how it builds itself up, almost like a noise rock album, I'd say, as well, but a lot more variations in rhythm. But as it keeps going, this ambience sort of builds up, and it actually starts making a rhythm, and it's the only time I've ever heard like something like this, just like vinyl noise pretty much, being used to create a rhythm that goes back and forth. But you get all these reverb drums, and then this massive, like, almost parade of percussion, like tambourines and bass drums and everything, starts entering from your left ear and just slowly pans across. And it's like such a weird experience to hear as it just travels across. But once it leaves, you're left with these sort of hanging piano notes and almost nothing else, until these horns come in that seem like they were like so loud when they were recorded they almost like broke the microphone that they were using. Like the microphone couldn't take how loud they were, so it sort of like they sound really off. And then every time the horns come in, the percussion starts coming in again, and the horns start playing with decreasing intervals. So like by the time this passageway ends, there's one set of percussion coming across, and the horns are then playing, and then this whole other set of percussion comes across. It's just mind-bending to hear. But then you hear sort of children shouting, and then a little while later you hear water flowing. And then you get into this fantastic part where the vocals come in. And there's all these ghostly vocal, like choral backing vocals all throughout that are just so fantastic in execution and writing as well. And Phil sort of talking about the son, sort of seeing him living out his life and doing all these good things and having these bad things and good things happening to him. It's just such a surreal experience, especially as the instrumentation sort of imitates the words he's saying. So like every once in a while, these deserty sorry, word's gonna come to me. Harpist chords, yeah, sort of come in, and they'll just play 3 notes, and that'll be it. But they sound just exactly like what you'd expect, like the sun to sound like. It's pretty crazy. And these distorted drums as well. And then he'll talk about this black ship coming in and how he runs from it, and it does sound like you get all these horns coming in that sort of signal this entrance, which is just terrifying to hear. And yeah, it's just absolutely fantastic opener. Eventually it just all gets swept away in this sort of boiling, like static noise. And you can hear like pretty much all the instruments just getting sucked down it, and his vocals as well, as he's sort of like screaming, but not in a cartoonish way, like an actual like terrifying way. But following that is 2, the sun, which is really great. It's pretty subdued, but it still has these sort of distorted drums, but the tempo is a little bit slower, and you get these sort of almost like trickling sounds of like water, but they're on guitar. Like it's like the guitar sounds like water. How could that be possible? But it just does. It's incredible. And him sort of just singing about, I know you're out there, and then these female backing vocals come in, and it's just so incredible. I really just don't have words for how like amazing this music is. Everything sounds like it was recorded for like 3 people to listen to, and I feel like that sort of almost like intimacy with like the songwriting really gets to you. And it also feels like extremely old. The same thing goes for the Glow Part 2, but it feels like it was recorded like 50 years ago, even though it was only like 20-ish. Oops. But following that, we get Universe, which is just this massive build. I don't have too much to say about it, but I think it's around like 6.5 minutes long, and it sounds extremely massive, especially with these sort of vocals that come in at one point of "What do you want?" God, I do not sound good on it, but it sounds fantastic. Just incredible piece. And eventually it transitions into Mount Eerie. This is another one of my uh, favorite tracks on here, where it sounds like this, like bar or sort of table filled with people are all singing this folk song, and these nice hanging instrumentals in the background. But then the like it builds up into this sort of like cutting rhythm, and just this one guy saying, "You see what happens? You see what happens now?" It's sort of intentionally trying to be weird, and this is a very absurd track as it keeps going. But with the groove of do 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 do, it does sound really weird, but it's also like I said, extremely groovy. But you sort of get into this part where you have all this absurdity going on in your right ear, and then your left ear is all just like ambient noise of just almost like vinyls crackling and wind blowing and stuff. But there's all these sounds of like a dog whining and this weird I'm not exactly sure what it is. I think it might be a like a melodica or something. And this voice that goes, "I am the candle," or something like that. I don't remember the full line of dialogue, but it is very absurd. And then the closer for this thing, Universe, is also just really incredible, with it sort of seeming to just keep pushing until the very end with all these great vocals. Yeah, I don't have too much to say on it other than it just being a perfect closer. But I think that's about all I have to say for this album. So definitely listen to the Glow Part 2 first, because I feel like a lot of the context for this album is built up on that album, and a lot of the musical ideas become a lot more clear on this album once you listen to the previous album. But definitely do check it out. It does help. It does feel a lot more cinematic, in my opinion. Not any more polished, but that's the complete opposite appeal of this music. The point of it is to sound as like unfinished, but at the same time like so intentionally unfinished that it sounds just extremely good. Like it's meant for, like I said before, like only three people to hear and no one else. So yeah, definitely check it out. I think that's about all I have to say on this album. Thanks for watching.